to all. Today our topic is the budget. Now first we will discuss about general information about the budget. The first budget was introduced in the year 1860 by James Wilson, who was finance member of the Legislative Council. At that time there was no concept of financial year as such. The concept of financial year started from 1867. From 1924 to 2016, budget used to be introduced on the last working day of February. But from 2017, we have changed that, and now budget is being introduced on the first working day of February every year. Till 2000, budget was to be introduced at the evening. But from 2001 onward, the budget is being introduced at 11 morning. Now the first budget after independence was introduced by Mr. Chetty, Shanmugam Chetty. But the first budget of Republic India was introduced by John Mathai. Sri Morarji Desai introduced the budget at largest number of times, 10 times, but in 2 slots. Continuously, C.D. Deshmukh introduced the budget for 7 times. This is the record. 3 prime ministers introduced the budget. First, it was in the year 1958 when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru introduced the budget. Second, it was in 1970 when Srimati Indira Gandhi introduced the budget. And third, in the year 1987, Rajiv Gandhi introduced the budget. So these are some of the important events about the budget. From 2017 onward, now there is only one general budget which includes the railway budget also. But till 2016, we used to have a separate railway budget from the general budget. Now, what are the important features of the budget? Now, budget is always for a financial year. What you call the sunset legislation means any law which is for a specific period is called sunset legislation. The budget is only for a year. There is a rule of lapse. It means the budget lapse on the last day of the financial year, that is 31st March. So the budget is not available on 1st April. It is always on cash basis and always gross in nature, not the net. Similarly, there is a what you call rule of lapse and also March rush. Since the budget lapse on the last working day of the financial year, there is always a rush to withdraw the money allotted in the budget. So these are some of the important features of the budget. Now, budgetary process is a constitutional process. There is a specific provision in the Constitution contained in Article 112 to 117 in respect of Union Government and Article 202 to Article 207 in respect of State Government. But the word budget is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. What is mentioned in the Constitution is annual financial statement. So budget is in general term, but under the constitution the word is annual financial statement. Under the constitution, it is the constitutional responsibility of the president to introduce the budget in the parliament every year. But as we know, the powers of the president are discharged by various authorities which are subordinate to him or her. That is specifically mentioned in Article 74 of the Constitution. Thus, on behalf of President of India, the Finance Minister introduces the budget in the Parliament. Budget is a money bill, and money bill can be introduced only in Lok Sabha, that is House of People. Budget can be introduced only on recommendations of the President. Budget is a document of the government, and hence it has to be approved by the cabinet. So on the day on which it is introduced, the first cabinet approval is obtained, then President's recommendations are obtained, and then at 11 o'clock, Finance Minister introduces the budget on the first working day of February every year. This is general about the budget. Now, budget structure is provided in the Article 112. How the budget should be, in which format the budget should be. The estimate committee decide the format in which the budget has to be produced, but format of the budget has to be according to the format of the accounts in which government accounts are maintained. Now, every budget has 3 vertical columns. The first column is about the information about the year which is completed. Second column is about the information pertaining to the year under consideration or ongoing year. And third column is about the information pertaining to the next year, that is for which the budget is prepared. Now, budget contains estimated figures of receipt and estimated figures of expenditure. Budget does not contain actual figures. But although the budget contains estimated figures, they are supposed to be close to the actual figures, and therefore what is called close budgeting. The concept is close budgeting, means the estimated figure should be as close as possible to the actuals, so that they should not be overestimation or they should not be underestimation. This is a general format. In every year budget, these are the 3 vertical columns. Estimated actual receipt of income and expenditure pertaining to the year which is closed or completed. Revised estimated figures of receipt and expenditure about the ongoing year, and estimated figures of receipt and expenditure about the next year. These 3 figures are necessary to enable the members of the parliament to scrutinize the budget, to examine the budget carefully, so that there has to be some consistency in the various figures proposed in the budget. Similarly, Article 112 also provides the structure of the budget. Under the Constitution, every budget must have 2 separate parts: revenue account budget and capital account budget. Similarly, the expenditure which is charged should be shown separately, from the expenditure which is quoted. So these are the specific things mentioned in the Constitution in Article 112 and Article 202 in respect of the state. Till 85-86, there used to be another classification, that is the developmental expenditure and non-developmental expenditure. From 1986-87 onward, we introduced another classification, planned expenditure, non-planned expenditure. But from 2017 onward, now we have discontinued the classification of planned and non-planned. So now the budget contains only two parts, a revenue account budget and capital account budget. Now revenue account budget includes revenue receipt, revenue expenditure. Capital account budget includes capital receipt, capital expenditure. Now let us come to the revenue account budget. Now what is revenue receipt? It again contains two parts, tax revenue receipt, non-tax revenue receipt. Tax revenue receipt, as we know, there are many taxes which are levied and collected by the union government and also by the state government separately. So that is a tax receipt. Non-tax receipt includes basically dividend or profit share which the government of India gets from various public sector undertakings, enterprises, including Reserve Bank of India and various other enterprises. Similarly, recovery of the interest on the loan given to state government and various other organizations, grant in aid received from other foreign countries as a assistance to the country. These are some of the important sources of non-tax revenue. About the capital receipt. Now revenue expenditure. Now revenue expenditure is a non-productive expenditure. It is expenditure on maintenance of the various programs, assets and capital already produced. Now the maximum portion of our budget is the revenue expenditure budget. And what are the most important major items of revenue expenditure? The largest atom for the government of India, largest atom of revenue expenditure is the grants in aid given to the state government. These are statutory grants in aid under Article 275 as recommended by the Finance Commission. So this is the largest item of revenue expenditure. Second largest item is about the interest on the loan taken by Government of India in the past. Third is salary and allowances of the employees of the Government of India. Fourth is defense expenditure, expenditure on establishment of the law and order enforcing agencies. And last but not least is the subsidy expenditure. So these are some of the major items of revenue expenditure which constitute nearly 90% of the total revenue expenditure. And revenue expenditure is an unproductive expenditure because this expenditure does not create any asset, any wealth. It is basically for maintenance of the existing assets, existing capital. Now we'll go to the capital account budget. Now again it has got two parts, capital receipt and capital expenditure. Now capital receipt again consists of two different parts. Debt capital receipt, non-debt capital receipt. Debt capital receipt means borrowing by the government within the country, outside the country. While the non-debt capital receipt includes disinvestment, sale of the government properties, and the recovery of the principal amount of loan given to state governments and various other organizations. About the capital expenditure means the expenditure which create assets, which create the wealth. So capital expenditure is a productive expenditure. Maximum expenditure must be on capital formation. Unfortunately, nearly 86% of the total expenditure out of budget is the revenue expenditure, while the share of capital expenditure is only 14% or so. So there is a need to increase the capital expenditure out of the budget. So this is in general the structure of the budget. Now what is the schedule? How the budget process starts? Now the budget process has got around 9 to 10 stages involved. The first stage is Finance Minister introduce the budget in Lok Sabha, and thereafter there is a speech by the Finance Minister in which he highlights the important features of the budget. So this is the first day. Thereafter there is a general discussion on the budget for about 2 to 3 days. This is not demand specific, but this is a general discussion. Thereafter, Lok Sabha is adjourned. The budget is scrutinized by the 24 departmental standing committees. As we are aware, there are 24 departmental standing committees of the Parliament. Each standing committee consists of members from Lok Sabha as well as from Rajya Sabha. Every standing committee is allotted certain ministries and certain departments. The standing committees, they work for about 2 to 3 weeks, and they scrutinize the budget on the ministry and departments allotted to the committee. They prepare the reports and submit to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Then the fourth stage in the Lok Sabha is the minister concerned present before the House demand for grants pertaining to different departments. Now when we are in the third stage, that is the scrutiny of budget by the departmental standing committees, members of Lok Sabha can also give the cut motions. Cut motion means the proposal to reduce the demand. That is called cut motion. So cut motions are given by the members of Lok Sabha when the departmental standing committees, they scrutinize the budget. And all these cut motions, they come up for discussion when the minister presents the demand for grants pertaining to different department under his control. Now there are 3 types of cut motions. One is called token cut motion. Now in this cut motion, the member proposes a cut of ₹100 to the demand made by the minister. This is about the grievances, about the functioning of the department. The member is not happy about the functioning of the department, and therefore he gives the token cut motion proposing a cut of ₹100 to the demand made by the minister for grants. Second is about the policy cut motion. Now in this case, the member proposes the cut of rupees 1 to the demand made by the minister. And third cut motion is about the economic cut motion. Here member has to indicate a specific amount of reduction in the demand. Now here the proposal of the member is that whatever demand is made by the minister is excessive. That much amount is not required to implement the programs or schemes of the government, and therefore he proposes the correct estimated amount required for implementation of the programs and propose the cut. This is how three types of cut motions are given by the members of Lok Sabha to the speaker, and it is up to the speaker to decide whether to accept the cut motions or not to accept. The cut motions must pertain to a specific demand. Cut motion cannot be given to the entire budget. It has to be very specific, and then there has to be a sufficient justification in support of the cut motion. After the cut motion is given to the speaker, speaker will scrutinize the cut motion, and if he accepts, then it will be sent to the minister for reply, and the minister reply on that cut motion will come up for discussion when there is a discussion on the demand by the minister concerned. So cut motions are given. Now after the scrutiny by the departmental standing committees, then there is a session of the Lok Sabha again. Now in this phase of the budget preparation or budget processing, every minister is given specific time and date to introduce demand for grants. So on a specific date and time allotted, the minister concerned will introduce demand for grants. There will be a discussion on the demand for grants. There will be voting, and at the same time the various cut motions received from the members of Lok Sabha will also be discussed. Now here, when the minister introduces the demand for grants, the House can take three different steps. First, the House can give assent to the demand for grants. Number two, House can reject the demand for grants. And third, House can give assent to the demand but reduce demand. That is a cut motion. House cannot increase the demand for grants made by the minister for various budget heads. House can reject, House can accept, or House can reduce, but cannot increase. After the demands are accepted, whether as it is or in reduced form, by the House, then there is a role for the finance minister. Finance minister will introduce two important bills. The first is appropriation bill, and second bill is a finance bill. Appropriation bill is about authorization to the government to withdraw the money from Consolidated Fund of India and to spend the money as provided in the sanctioned budget. Finance bill is about the taxation proposal. The cut motion cannot be given to the appropriation bill because appropriation bill contains only those demands and grants which are already sanctioned by the House. So there is no question of cut motion. But cut motion can be given to the finance bill. After both the bills are passed by the Lok Sabha, then job of the Lok Sabha is over. Entire budget along with appropriation bill and finance bill will go to the Rajya Sabha. Now Rajya Sabha will have to discuss the budget within a period of 14 days from the date of receipt of the proposal. This being the money bill, Rajya Sabha cannot reject or cannot sanction the appropriation bill or the finance bill. What Rajya Sabha can do is only to give suggestions and recommendations. If the Rajya Sabha gives recommendations and suggestions, the bill along with the budget will come back to the Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha will discuss the suggestion and recommendation made by the Rajya Sabha and will decide whether to accept or to reject the recommendation, suggestions made by the Rajya Sabha. It is the authority of the Lok Sabha. After the Lok Sabha take the decision, then the bill and the budget as a whole, as sanctioned by the Lok Sabha, will go to the President for his or her assent. Now this is a money bill. President has got two options. One, he can give the assent to the bill, that is appropriation bill and finance bill, or he can withhold the assent. But he cannot return the money bill for reconsideration of the House. After the President gives his or her assent to the appropriation bill and finance bill, the entire budget process is over. Entire budget is converted into two acts, Appropriation Act and Finance Act. Both these acts are for a year, for a financial year. They survive only during the financial year. Both the acts lapse on the last day of the financial year. This is how the entire budgetary process is completed. Now, budget is prepared, or what you call the nodal ministry is the Finance Ministry of Government of India or Government of the state. As we know, the Finance Ministry has got 5 different departments. One of the most important department of the Finance Ministry is Department of Economic Affairs. The budget is prepared by the Department of Economic Affairs by Budget Division. In the matter of preparation of the budget, various agencies, they assist the Finance Department in the matter of preparation of budget. The Department of Revenue, Department of Expenditure, Department of Financial Services, Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, various administrative ministries, Control General of Accounts, Niti Aayog, all these agencies, they assist the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance in the matter of preparation of budget. In India, the budget preparation is a bottom-up process. First, the budget is prepared by the lower level agencies, what we call regional offices. Then all those proposals go to the departments and from department to the Finance Ministry. This is how the entire budget is prepared. Now, budget is not a final document. It is not rigid. It is flexible. During the year, many changes take place and therefore, budget has to undergo some changes as and when required. The procedure for changing the budgetary matter or budgetary contents, they are given in Article 115. It is through the supplementary grants, additional grants and excess grants. Now first we will discuss about the supplementary grants. Now here the demand is already there in the budget. The program is already there in the budget, already sanctioned by the Parliament. But it is noticed that the funds provided are not enough to implement the program schemes fully, and therefore Minister proposes these supplementary grants. It is also a money bill, requires recommendation of the President. The Minister introduces the demand for supplementary grants. There is again discussion and ultimately House sanction the supplementary grants. Normally, demand for supplementary grants are introduced in the winter session because by that time the Minister knows the expenditure position of the funds provided in the budget. About the additional grants, this is a totally new item. It is not provided in the original budget sanctioned by the Parliament. Now here the Minister introduces the new item and there is a discussion on that, and Parliament again sanction the additional grant. It is also a money bill, requires recommendations of the President before being introduced. So this is the second, and normally a demand for additional grant is generally made during the monsoon session. And third is the demand for excess grants. Now this is a constitutional law that the government cannot spend more than what is provided in the budget. But many times government exceeds the amount than what is provided in the budget, and that is noticed by the CAG during the audit. So CAG points out the excess expenditure incurred by the government, which is a constitutional irregularity. As we know, the CAG report is discussed in the PSC. After PSC accept the observations of the CAG, then the Minister introduces the demand for excess grant. This generally takes place after 2-3 years. This is how the budget is amended during the year through the process of supplementary grants, additional grant and excess grants. These are provided in Article 115 of the Constitution in respect of Union Government. There is another article, that is Article 116, which again is about the budget. In this article there are three important terms: vote on account, vote of credit and exceptional grants. Now what is vote on account? What is the meaning of vote of grant and exceptional grants? All these things are provided in the Constitution. So vote on account means temporary authorization given by Lok Sabha to the government to spend the money out of Consolidated Fund of India till the budget is sanctioned or till the period of 2 months expires. Now before 2017, the practice was to introduce the budget on the last working day of February. The budget process takes place about 60 to 70 days for sanctioning the budget, and therefore on 1st April there is no sanctioned budget available for the government, because earlier budget expires on 31st March. New budget is not sanctioned because it takes about 60 to 70 days, and therefore budget is generally sanctioned in the first week of May of that year. So therefore there is a problem before the government how to spend the money from the Consolidated Fund of India. And to overcome that problem, the specific provision has been made in the Constitution, in which after the budget is introduced by the Minister of Finance, there is a general discussion. The vote on account is sanctioned by the House. This is generally for 2 months and expenditure is limited to 1/6. This is a vote on account. But from 2017 onward, now there is no need to get the vote on account sanction because we complete the entire budgetary process before 31st March of the year. So on 1st April, regular sanction budget is available to the government to incur the expenditure. Earlier, similarly, there was another law which is still there, that is a Provisional Collection of Taxes Act 1931. Because vote on account pertain only to expenditure part. What about the recovery of taxes? So that provision was in the law known as Provisional Collection of Taxes Act 1931, in which government was authorized to collect the taxes till 75 days from the date of introduction of finance bill. So this is how these two important provisions have been provided in Article 116 of the Constitution. Vote of credit. Now many times the nature of activity is such that it is very difficult to estimate the expenditure required for that particular activity. For example, natural calamity. Now we do not know immediately the vastness of the calamity, and therefore it becomes very difficult to estimate the losses and relief to be provided to the affected people. For this purpose, there is a specific provision that government make the demand for vote of credit. It is like a blank check. Once the vote of credit is introduced, government get the authority to exceed the expenditure what is provided in the budget. Now, exceptional grant is not a part of any department. It is generally for the intelligence agencies like RAW or any other agencies which are required to incur expenditure to collect the information from the enemy countries or from various other organizations. So these are the three things which are specifically mentioned in Article 116 of the Constitution. So this is how the entire budget. Appropriation law is under Article 114. Read with Article 266 of the Constitution. While the Finance Act is under Article 117. Read with Article 265 of the Constitution. So both the entire budget is converted into these two important laws. And this is how the entire budgetary process is completed. Now about the types of budget. There are 3 or 4 different types of budget. The first, which is a traditional budget, or it is called line item budget. It is also called the incremental budget. We take the earlier year budget as a base and provide the revised provisions. In this budget, there is a specific mention of the activity and the grants provided for that particular activity. Purpose is not mentioned. So this is what we call the budget good for audit of expenditure. Second is about the performance budget. It was developed by the Hoover Commission in 1949 in USA. It was implemented in India in the year 1968 on the experiment basis, but from 75-76 onward, many departments started implementing the performance budget. In this, there is a specific purpose mentioned. What we call, there is a financial input and physical output. In earlier budget, there was no mention of physical output, but in this, whatever money we spend, what is the physical output we expect? For example, construction of primary health center buildings, and for that a provision of 20 crore has been made. In perform budget, there will be a special column. How many primary health center buildings will be completed out of the grants provided in the budget? So there is specific target, specific purpose, what we call management by objectives. Here we are spending the money for a specific objective, that is construction of a specific number of primary health center buildings. Then there is a third budget, what we call the outcome budget, which we started from 2005. Here there is a third column, the financial input, physical output and actual benefit to the people. Suppose we are going to construct 10 primary health center buildings. How many people will get benefit or health service from these 10 primary health centers? Or if you construct 10 irrigation dams, how many farmers will get irrigation? How much area will be irrigated? How much increase in production will take place? So this is the what we call outcome budget, which is the real budget, although it is difficult to what we call the prepare such type of budget unless you have got sufficient data and detailed updated information. Then we have got zero-based budget, which was introduced by Peter A. Peer in the year 1969. We accepted that and implemented again on the experiment basis in the year 1986-87. Now in this zero-based budget, now there is no base. Zero base means there is no base. Normally in every budget preparation, we use the preceding year budget as a base and make necessary changes in that budget to prepare the revised budget for the next year. But in zero-based budget, there is no base. Here we start from zero. But in actual practice, that is not possible. Here what we do, whatever programs which we are implementing already, they are examined thoroughly. Suppose there are 400 different programs under implementation by Government of India. All these 400 programs are scrutinized, examined, assessed on 3 different points. Whether these programs have benefited the people. If so, how much? That is the first answer. Second point is whether the program needs to be continued. And third, if it is to be continued, then whether it is same format or in a modified format, on the same scale, on a larger scale. So zero-based budget helps us to eliminate a large number of unnecessary schemes and thereby resulting into lot of savings. This will help the government to introduce or to design new welfare programs. It will also help the government to reduce the rate of taxation. So zero-based budget is really a very meaningful, very objective budgeting. So zero-based budget together with outcome budget will serve the real purpose of ensuring welfare of the people, solving problems of the people, speeding up the growth process. Then there is a gender budget also. Gender budget does not mean a separate budget for the women. It means a general budget in which a specific schemes have been provided for the welfare of women. Specific budgetary provisions have been made for the welfare of women. That is called a gender budget. Similarly, budget also can be classified in 3 different categories. What we call the surplus budget means the government expenditure is less than the receipt. So there is a surplus. Nowadays, we don't find such type of surplus budget in any country in the world. Second budget is a balanced budget. Means government expenditure is just equal to the government receipt. And third is the deficit budget, where the government expenditure is more than government receipt. And this gap is filled through the process called borrowing, what we call fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit means borrowing from the market, within the country, outside the country. But fiscal deficit does not include off-budget borrowing. Off-budget borrowing means various departments of government or various government organizations controlled by the government, they borrow necessary funds from the public account of India or other financial organization, and those borrowing do not form part of the what we call the budget, because that money does not come into the consolidated fund of India. So off budget borrowing does not become part of the fiscal deficit. Now about the deficit, in every budget there are three types of deficit shown. First is the fiscal deficit, as we have discussed, that is the borrowing by the government from various organizations within the country and outside the country. Revenue deficit means when the government revenue expenditure is more than revenue receipt. Normally, revenue expenditure has to be less than revenue receipt. There has to be a revenue surplus so that the same surplus can be used for capital investment. But in India, since 1975, we are having huge revenue deficit. Means government spends more than what it collects as a receipt or the revenue receipt. Now, in fact, the revenue receipt constitute nearly 70% of the fiscal deficit. So, what is the fiscal deficit is manageable, it can be controlled, but revenue deficit is very rigid and it is very difficult to control. Today, we are facing a problem of huge revenue deficit. The third is the primary deficit. Primary deficit means fiscal deficit minus interest payment during the year. That is called primary deficit. There is another term called monetized deficit, when borrowing is done from the Reserve Bank of India. In fact, the government of India has stopped borrowing long-term debt from the RBI in the year 97. So now there is no monetized deficit as such, but there is a provision. The government of India can borrow from the RBI, and if it borrows, it will increase the money circulation, because RBI will have to print the additional notes and give it to government as a loan. So it will increase the money circulation, it will create the pressure on the available goods and services, resulting into inflation. So normally, monetized deficit is not a desirable thing. About the borrowing, now the Constitution Article 292 says that government can borrow only with the approval of the Parliament. Government cannot borrow without Parliament's approval. Now this approval is obtained by the government through the budget. Finance Act provides for the borrowing mechanism, and government has to borrow limited to what is provided in the Finance Act sanctioned by the Parliament. We have got Article 266 also, which says that government cannot spend a single pie without the authority of law, and law is enacted by the Parliament. So Appropriation Act and Finance Act, both these acts authorizes the government to levy the taxes, to borrow and to spend the money. Budget is concerned only with the consolidated fund of India. Budget has nothing to do with public account of India and contingency fund of India. since the budget is concerned only with the Consolidated Fund of India, it is the Parliament which has the ultimate authority to authorize the government to withdraw the money from it and to spend the money as sanctioned by the Parliament. So this is about the entire budgetary process. I missed one important point which I would like to mention here. Now, budget document which is introduced in the Lok Sabha also contains many other documents in support of the budget. And these documents are: 1. Budget speech by the Finance Minister. 2. Annual financial statement. 3. Demand for the grants. 4. Revenue budget and capital budget shown separately. Appropriation bill, finance bill, vote on account if required, and the 3 important documents under the FRBM Act. They are macroeconomic framework statement, fiscal policy strategy statement, mid-term fiscal policy statement. In addition, it also provides for the outcome budget in respect of some of the departments and also the budget at a glance. These are some of the documents which are attached to the budget main document, and they are all given to the members at the same time in a big bag. So these are the important point to be noted, because many times the question is also asked about which are the documents which are introduced together with the budget. So these are the 10 documents which I have mentioned, which are introduced together with the budget on the same day on which the budget is introduced in the Lok Sabha.